And welcome to another episode of the Afterburners podcast. You may have noticed that Sam is not doing the introduction this week. Sam is sick. He has no voice. Coincidentally, Mike is also sick and has no voice. I'll leave it up to you to speculate what's going on there. Did they swap spit and get sick? I don't know. Maybe they did. Who really couldn't be sure about what's going on? But I'm here. And I'm joined by a very special guest, longtime friend of the podcast, longtime fantasy friend in general, good guy, and new dad, Christian. Christian, how are you?
I'm doing well, man. Not getting nearly enough sleep, but who does whenever they have a newborn?
Yeah, for those of you who don't know, Christian is literally a new father. He had his kid within the past 2 days, right?
It was on Friday.
Yeah,
So it's the 17th.
So, yep, he has had his baby home for a few days and has decided that he somehow has time to jump on a fantasy football podcast. And we appreciate it because otherwise there's just going to be me pretending to do different voices to pretend other people were here.
Yeah, and we all know that we don't want to hear that. So,
yeah, that's true. My impressions can be pretty bad, guys. Pretty bad. So, Christian, this week is you're lucky. You're on a themed episode of the Afterburners. This is Thanksgiving coming up this week in the U.S. We know Mike's Canadian, but this is Thanksgiving week and he can deal with it. And what are you doing for Thanksgiving? Are you going home? You staying here?
My family always gets together, has a big shindig. Everybody brings a side dish or a main course or whatever. And, I'm responsible for that, nice, delicious green bean casserole. So I'll be making that, and then I'll be eating everybody else's food. So. And I get spared a lot of time of having to hold my own kid because my family will be wanting to hold him plenty. So,
yeah, I'm sure that's going to be an interesting experience just having a newborn right before Thanksgiving. I'm sure the family will be fawning all over him.
Oh, absolutely.
And I can't say I cook, so I guess your family probably appreciates you a bit more than my family appreciates me. I kind of sit around and eat and watch football with my dad, and I'm pretty much useless when it comes to Thanksgiving. So definitely kudos to you for being a contributor unlike me. I'm just a jabroni.
We all know that football's the main event of Thanksgiving anyway. So, ladies and everybody can have the parade, and we'll have football for 3 games now, and everybody else can do whatever they want.
Yeah, that sounds good. And speaking of football, we got a full show here for you guys today. We're going to get right into it. The first topic we had today is a player I'm sure everybody is thankful for if they own him this season, and maybe not so thankful if they don't own him in their leagues. We're talking about Adam Thielen. And right now, Adam Thielen is actually ranked as the number 3 wide receiver in fantasy points, at least in half PPR, and I'm sure in PPR leagues as well. Christian, I'll let you lead off here just because I wrote a ton of stats down, but I just want your take on this. Is he a top 5 fantasy receiver? And is he top 5 for the rest of the season? And how are you looking at him going forward in Dynasty?
In Dynasty, I don't think you can consider him as a top 5 Dynasty asset at the wide receiver position. I think he's right on the cusp of 10, if not in 10, just by the way he's consistently put up 5+ catches, 50+ yards, like Antonio Brown was always known for. However, for the rest of the season, I think he's a top 5 wide receiver. He obviously has a very good rapport with Case Keenum, who's playing a man possessed. I know all the Vikings fans really want Bridgewater to get back out there, but they would be foolish to pull a Buffalo and put Bridgewater out there. And then, I love Adam Thielen. You and I have had many discussions. We both have team names or themes of hooked on a Thielen, or I did more than a Thielen. A music reference there. He's just, he's that undrafted guy that you'd love to see succeed.
Yep.
And he's, I don't think as for Dynasty, I don't think he's ahead of Stephon Diggs, but God, they're 1A and 1B when it comes to that team and the production that they're capable of doing.
Yeah, that's definitely true. And just some interesting things that I pulled up about Adam Thielen. So this season, he's one of only 2 receivers to have already hit over 900 receiving yards, the other one being Antonio Brown, who is just destroying the league as per usual. Another one was that last year he was 27th in total yards overall. However, what was really interesting was he did that with way less target volume than anybody else. And I know he's not here to defend himself, but Sam, target volume is important for receiving yards and touchdowns, and you really can't get any kind of production in terms of receiving yards or touchdowns without targets. So notable that Adam Thielen had way less targets than everybody else, but still managed to break that 900-yard mark last season. And then I think I had one more here. Or no, that was my only other stat, but I agree with you. I don't think he's a top 5 guy, really, as much as I love Adam Thielen. For this season, I'd be comfortable saying maybe top 10 or 15. But based on track records and everything else, I can't really put him much higher than top 20 to 25 range. I don't know how you're feeling about that.
I mean, I don't have my own personal set of rankings. I kind of fly by the cuff when it comes to all of this stuff. However, I think top 20, based on how he performed the second half of last year and how he performed this year, that's a full season of stats. It's been super consistent, and like you were saying, hyper efficient. Mm-hmm. There haven't been many receivers that have been that as efficient as he is. His catch percentage has to be astronomical, I imagine.
Yeah,
on target targets, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I obviously I don't know that off the top of my head, but I have another great story, and it involves a guy that we play in several leagues with. I traded for Adam Thielen in December of last year in our 2-quarterback, 2 tight end league that I'm in with Zach. And it cost me a lot. It cost me Richard Rodgers and a 3rd-round pick.
Oh, my God. And how expensive.
That is looking really, really bad for Zach.
So, wait, this trade was with Zach specifically?
Say what?
This trade was with Zach specifically?
Yes.
For those of you who don't know, we're talking about at Lopsided Trades, the guy whose blog I used to write for, and who's a fellow Dynasty League football writer with me. Sounds like one of the worst trades he's possibly ever made.
It's possible. It was just my revenge trade for him stealing Emmanuel Sanders from me a couple of years before. That also involved me getting Richard Rodgers from him in a different league. That was my revenge trade from him.
To be fair to Zach, I definitely have had some of those trades with him where I've given him players for way too cheap, but I've also gotten some players way too cheap. So Zach is an interesting guy to trade with. But that's very interesting about Adam Thielen. Now I have to ask a question that I'm sure Sam would ask if he was here. So Adam Thielen, white receiver, gritty, names, all the stuff you can throw out there. Is he a future Patriot?
Ooh, God, you have to imagine so, as long as Bill Belichick and Tom Brady are there. Let's say if Edelman doesn't return to form after his injury and Amendola decides that he doesn't want to be there anymore, I think Thielen is probably a really good candidate to fit right into the Patriot way.
You heard it here first. Adam Thielen, future Patriot. Although personally, I have to say I'm hoping Jarvis Landry goes to take over the slot, especially with the Patriots' history of taking the best players from their division rivals and making them even better. But we'll see. We'll see. I think Adam Thielen does fit the Patriots' way, if you will.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that.
So moving right along here, we have another hot button issue. And you might have seen me tweeting a bit about this earlier today. If you pay attention to my Twitter feed, aka all 5 of you who actually follow along what I tweet. But a lot of people have been down on Kareem Hunt the past few weeks because, he came out of the gate so strong and has kind of tapered off the past few weeks. Christian, what is your take on Kareem Hunt and how we as Dynasty players should be valuing him?
I think it's very fascinating. Both Kareem Hunt and the Chiefs as a team seem to be one and the same. If one does really well, then the other does really well. So it's hard to know if the Chiefs did really well because Kareem Hunt was doing really well, or if Kareem Hunt was doing really well because the Chiefs were doing really well. Alex Smith is having the same problem too. And every game that they've won, both of them have looked really good, and all the games that they've lost, they've not looked nearly as good. I think it's an overreaction to start calling him a bust and saying that the first 5 games were outliers because the last 5 games haven't been nearly as productive. But I happen to be one of those guys following your tweets occasionally, and like you said, he's averaging 80 yards running and 30 yards receiving in every single game. A lot of that's bolstered by the first half of his season, but that means he's not just destroying the stats that he had. Andy Reid produces productive running backs. Spencer Ware became a productive running back. And, everybody was drafting Spencer Ware as a top 20, top 15 running back this year because of Andy Reid, not because of Spencer Ware.
I think that's your afterburn. That's an afterburn on Spencer Ware. Congratulations, you've officially joined the club.
There you go. If you can't tell, I'm not the biggest Spencer Ware fan. I actually traded him for Terrell Pryor in one league.
I wasn't
last year, not this
fan either. Mark, and I have to give him a shout out once per pod. Mark Walton is another guy that we play with regularly, and he refuses to listen to this podcast unless mentioned by name. He was someone who was high on Spencer Ware. We had a huge debate about it. He kind of convinced me that Ware is decent, but still not that high on Ware. And there you go, Mark. There's your shout out. Now you have to listen.
Hoorah. I think it would be foolish for guys to sell him any less than what they would have after 3 or 4 games when his value is at its greatest. Because two things are going to happen. Either his production is going to go back to what it was, and then you're going to reap it and win a championship. Or his production is going to keep taking a hit because he's getting fatigued. He's a rookie running back who's gotten so much work this year. And you keep him for next year and you run him out there, or you sell him to an owner who's really high on him and wants to take advantage if possible.
But
definitely don't sell low.
They'll sell me Kareem Hunt. I will gladly buy him from you for probably whatever price you're selling him for.
Yeah. I know I'm not going to pay your price for Kareem Hunt because and me and you have a lot of trade discussions about a lot of our players. And both of us want max value for our players, understandably so. And neither one of us really want to fork over max value.
That's fair. And something interesting that you mentioned earlier. So you mentioned how I was talking to you about the fact that he has averaged 80 rush yards per game and 30 receiving yards per game. And this is the fun Kareem Hunt stat that I was promising on Twitter. But since 1920, there have been only 4 rookie running backs to accomplish having 80 rush yards per game as well as 30 receiving yards per game. And that list includes Marshall Faulk, Edgerrin James, and Billy Sims. That's a pretty good list of guys to be compared to.
Yeah, anytime you're compared to a Hall of Famer and Marshall Faulk and a guy who was extremely productive for years and years with Peyton Manning, you're doing okay. As far as the history of the NFL goes, I'm not knowledgeable of Billy Sims, but I imagine he was a pretty decent running back. So.
Yeah, I was unfamiliar with most of these guys just because they were before my time. If you're not a regular listener of the podcast or don't pay attention to what I've been saying on Twitter, I've really only been watching football since the mid-2000s. And despite the fact that I'm a huge baseball history buff and know baseball from before I started watching, I just never seem to get that into football history. So if it's players from before the mid-2000s, it's very unlikely that I know about them.
Yeah, I've been watching football. I became a Saints fan in 2002, the first year that they won their first playoff game. It only took 33 years, but no big deal. So I decided to become a Saints fan then, growing up in South Louisiana. It's been obviously very up and down since then. But I watched before that, but I still didn't pay attention as closely because I'm with you. I'm a big baseball guy.
Yeah, we both started out as baseball guys. In fact, Christian, you want to share what you named your kid and what his initials spell out?
So my son's name is Silas Todd LeBlanc, and his initials are STL, and that is a shout out to my St. Louis Cardinals, who I'm a big fan of. I have the most amazing wife who allowed me to do that.
That's true sports fandom and also love right there for you folks. But we're going to move right along here. One last thing about Kareem Hunt that I wanted to say, though, and I said this on Twitter earlier, and I just have to repeat it, mainly because I amused myself when I said it. Early in the season, he was performing like he had gone God mode, or as fans who grew up in the 90s know, Super Saiyan. That's what we called it. God mode was Super Saiyan. So Kareem Hunt was performing like a Super Saiyan all for the first 5 games of the season. And as you know, if you're a fan of Dragon Ball Z, you can only stay in Super Saiyan form for so long before your energy runs out. But you can go back to Super Saiyan form after you recover a bit with, I forget what those beans were called, but there are some beans that helped you recover. Anyway, the point is, Kareem Hunt has a high ceiling. He hasn't given you less than 8 points in 0.5 PPR yet in his entire career, which is 1 season. But I would not be selling him for anything less than getting back value for a high-end running back.
I completely agree. I think it would make 0 sense to give up whatever value he still has, because he's not going to lose that much value after a few subpar games compared to what he started out with.
Yep, and people are worried about Spencer Ware coming back, apparently. We both seem to be on the same page that seems to mean nothing to either of us.
It's Ware will spell him occasionally, and Charkandrick West will still be the pass-catching back, or whatever that he plays.
Yeah, I'll have to look it up. I'm not even sure Ware's under contract for next year.
Oh, that could be exciting. Actually, that might be a reason to scoop him up, to be honest.
He might still be, but I'm not sure. And if he is, I kind of doubt he has a lot of guaranteed money. But that'll be something I'll look into and post either on my account or the Afterburners account. But now we're going to move along. We're going to talk about another undrafted free agent. If you guys don't know, I really like undrafted free agents because they have to work extra hard to make the team. And then when they start to produce, people still seem to undervalue them just because draft capital wasn't spent on them. But this guy also found himself in a situation that everyone hated when the season started, and that's Robbie Anderson. Robbie Anderson is a really interesting guy. He's produced for a while now, and I actually have an article coming out tomorrow. If you're listening to the podcast later in the week, we're recording this on Tuesday, so it should be out on Dynasty League Football on Wednesday, and it's going to highlight reasons why I think Robbie Anderson is undervalued. But Christian, before I go on my whole I love Robbie Anderson, hurrah, yay, Robbie Anderson cheerleading session here, I want to get your take on him and see whether I'm just being ridiculous or people are undervaluing Robbie Anderson, or just what do you think before you even get the chance to read the article?
Yeah. So I think I'm probably right along with the rest of the fantasy football world, and the fact that merely because he is a New York Jet, there is no interest. However, Josh McCown has played really, really well this year, a lot higher of a level than everybody thought he was going to play. The Jets are, not a winless team either, and they've played as a team a lot better than everybody thought they were going to be. So naturally, it makes sense that somebody on that team has been performing well. They signed Jeremy Curley right before the season started. Didn't really do a whole lot. Jermaine Kearse has been a nice addition for them. He's got pretty much all the name recognition on that team. Him and
Austin, I don't think Jermaine Kearse has ever been called name recognition in his life.
But that's what happens when you play for the New York Jets, man. Name recognition. Well, everybody knows Curse because of the catch in the Super Bowl that almost won the Seahawks the Super Bowl, and then Pete Carroll was Pete Carroll. But yeah, but Robbie Anderson. I mean, I know that he's done well, and that's about how much I know about Robbie Anderson. So I'm curious to hear all your stuff.
Sure. So I'm not going to share everything that I wrote in the article, obviously, but just some things that I pulled out of it. If you take his last 16 games played, he would have scored 157.5 PPR points. Last season, that would have been good enough to make him the WR31 on the season. It also means he would have been about 3 points behind Adam Thielen, another undrafted free agent hero, for all of last season. The other thing that's very interesting is in 5 games this season, he's been above 11 points. And since week 5, he actually hasn't had less than 9.6 points. So since week 5, he's had 9.6 points or more. He's been very streaky where he's getting a bunch of touchdowns, but he's also seeing 6.4 targets per game. And as you mentioned, Josh McCown is throwing the ball well, to everyone's surprise, because I was one of those guys who went, oh, the Jets and Robbie Anderson was just arrested at a music festival and going to be investigated by the league. And now they've signed all these guys. I don't know how this is going to work out. But the thing is, Robbie Anderson also had a 3-week stretch last season at the end of the season where he didn't finish lower than the WR17. He was in that stretch. He was the WR15, 9, and 17, I think it was. So this is the kind of, I guess, a very big sneak peek into the points I'm making in the article. But this is a young guy who's producing. He actually has size. He's a speed guy. I've seen comps of Brandon Cooks. I don't think he is Brandon Cooks, but he's a young guy producing on a team where he has opportunity. And it seems like the kind of guy that dynasty leaguers should be all over. And yet I'm still hearing talk of, oh, do you think a 3rd-round pick is good enough for Robbie Anderson? Personally, I don't. But if I can trade a 3rd-round pick for Robbie Anderson in any of my leagues, you better believe I will be doing that as soon as we get off this podcast.
Yeah, I mean, just based on what you said, because he had that 3-week stretch last year and the consistency that he's putting up this year, I feel personally would have no hesitation throwing a 2nd-round pick at somebody's way for him.
And just if you're the fact that he's doing that with Josh McCown, as you mentioned, no one believes in him, or the fact that last year he was doing it with Fitzpatrick, Geno Smith, and Bryce Petty. I mean, I can't even remember Bryce Petty's name, and he was putting up stats for Bryce Petty.
And I think, again, that's what's going to cause hesitation from people is the unknown QB situation. Is Josh McCown going to play again next year and play at the same level? Or is Christian Hackenberg ever going to get the reins, or Bryce Petty again, or whoever? Those 2 names don't inspire confidence in anybody in the fantasy community, nor should they.
Yeah, that's fair. I think Josh Allen might end up going to the Jets. So I've heard a lot of the Jets are in love with Josh Allen. It seems like there's a decent quarterback class, but I guess we also thought that maybe Bryce Petty would be decent. I don't think anybody, correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't watch a ton of college and you do. Did anybody ever think that Christian Hackenberg would actually be a good NFL quarterback?
I think so. There was a spin to Hackenberg that I don't know if it was his people or just Kuiper and McShay that were successful in doing this, that the promotion of he had the look and he had the raw tools, but he never performed at Penn State, ever. He never, he would have games here and there. It was nothing special. Kind of what Sam Darnold is doing this year. He's playing well, but he's not playing what you would think a number 1 overall pick, like what Andrew Luck did in college. He's not playing that well.
That's scary to hear as a Giants fan, because they are apparently looking very strongly at Darno.
Yeah, I've heard about that because didn't they have 2 executives at the UCLA USC game this past weekend?
I'm really hoping actually that they're there to scout Rosen. Maybe I'm just biased because I'm also Jewish, which I've mentioned on the very first podcast, if that comes as a surprise to any of you. But in the New York market where there are a bunch of Jewish people, I feel like Josh Rosen could do very well. People would definitely support that move.
Oh, I would say so. I mean, that's just a very unique twist that they would be able to spin on that.
Yeah. I don't know if they'd play that angle. It might not come off the way they'd want it to.
I don't think they'd play it in the public eye, but I'm sure it would trickle down and would show up somewhere. If not, then word of mouth and street speak would work.
Yeah, definitely. And so we're going to transition a bit again here. And this just, it's the holiday season. It's Thanksgiving. You're going to be thankful for a bunch of things in your life. I'm sure yours will be at the very top of your list, will be your newborn as well as your family. But taking away the selfless aspect of that, who are you most thankful for in fantasy this year? Who has helped your teams the most? Or is there one particular player on one particular team that you think, man, this guy has really carried me?
Well, the guy that I have the most shares of that has helped me in the most leagues would be Golden Tate. I think he continues somehow to be a very underrated guy, even though, you look at the other receivers in Detroit, you've got who's gotten a lot of hype. Kenny Golladay obviously got so much crazy hype in the preseason. And then Marvin Jones has been really good this year. That's the only outlier. But Golden Tate has been the 1B to Marvin Jones' 1A. He's a top 15 guy in half PPR scoring. And that's what I play in every league pretty much. The one I've been most thankful for until Sunday would have been Chris Thompson. He's been a top 10 running back all year, and my fantasy hopes and dreams possibly have come crashing down because of my Saints, which is very unfortunate.
Yeah, that always is a struggle for me too. I try not to root for fantasy players against the Giants. This season, it's been a little bit easier because the Giants are just so bad. But yeah, I definitely felt bad for you with the whole Chris Thompson thing.
Yeah. The one that's been super disappointing, though, on the same team has been Jamison Crowder.
Yeah, he's been turning it around a bit lately, though.
And he's cracked my starting lineup only because I've had no other choice.
And it's funny that you mentioned Golden Tate. I don't know how many people actually watch the YouTube version of this. I'm going to hold up my really shitty handwriting here. But I wrote down player I'm thankful for, and it says Marvin Jones.
Oh, gosh.
I have Marvin Jones in a best ball league, and I got him in the 15th round of our best ball dynasty startup, which is super cheap. And I think people kind of forgot that he had a stretch last year where he was performing like a WR1.
Oh, his start to the season last year was unbelievable. Didn't he have 4 TDs in the first 2 games?
Yeah, he was off the charts and then tapered off as Golden Tate came back on strong.
Yeah.
But he's definitely had weeks this season where in a best ball league, he's just flat out won me those weeks. So I'm very thankful for Marvin Jones. I actually didn't even really expect to compete in that league, but made some moves where I'm now in second place. And just going back to Golden Tate for a second, I wonder who stupidly traded you Golden Tate in the league we're talking about.
Could be this Act Wrecked fantasy guy that we know and love so much. I don't know.
Yeah, he sounds like a real jabroni. I think he did that Golden Tate for something like Laquan Treadwell, DeAndre Washington, and I can't remember who the other
was. Willie Snead.
Oh yeah, Willie Snead.
That was supposed to be the big piece of the deal.
Yeah, Willie Snead, the guy who was supposed to get 1,000 yards this season and has done nothing for me. So if I had to say a player I'm least thankful for, it is definitely Willie Snead. 100%.
Wow. I'm thankful for that trade because I also got Duke Johnson in return for that trade too. And
wow, you just had to let everybody know what a terrible trade that was for you.
Well, I mean, in everybody's defense, we made that trade before Marshawn Lynch signed with the Raiders.
Yeah, that's true.
So
it's
he
also
was supposed to be the starting.
I'm lucky enough that he hasn't bitten me that badly,
Right.
considering my team's in pretty good shape, I think.
Yes.
But that was one of my worst dynasty trades probably ever.
Still not the worst fantasy trade in that league, though.
For those who are not in that league, Christian traded Antonio Brown, and I can't even remember exactly what it was for. I just remember it was ridiculous.
Marcus Wheaton and a 3rd-round pick.
Yeah, this was to be fair to Christian, this was when we had all just started playing Dynasty and didn't really know how it worked. So it's not as bad as if we were playing now and he made that same trade. But
that's my justification for it.
Yeah.
And the worst part is I got AB in the 3rd round of that draft, of the startup draft.
Yeah. I look at the players I drafted sometimes and go, why didn't I keep this guy? I made a lot of dumb mistakes, but we all learned in the process. That's why we are where we are now. And so another transition here, Christian. We're going to jump right into everyone's, I think, favorite part of the show, or at least I've definitely heard some people say it's their favorite part of the show. And it's a part you said you've never listened to before, but everybody seems to like it. Mostly because we seem to live in a society now where either people love arguing or people love when you just shit on things. And that's what this is. This is the afterburns of the week, but it's particularly Thanksgiving themed. So I guess it's forward looking to Thursday. So just to clarify for everybody, we can either take a dump on food we don't like. We can talk about how it's annoying to be with relatives, whatever you feel like going off on, Christian, here. It's all you. This is your moment to shine.
I'm going to let you go first, sir. I'm just letting you go first this entire time.
All right. So my Thanksgiving-based afterburn, I have a few. I'm going to start with the number one that is probably going to get people mad at me. Turkey sucks. Turkey is not a good food. I hate turkey. I'll eat it, but it is my least favorite part of the entire meal. I don't care how much gravy you cover it in. It's always dry, and it's just not that good. And that's coming from someone who can no longer eat red meat, and my only choices are poultry. I much rather have, like, if someone went, oh, we're going to change the Thanksgiving tradition and make it roast chicken, I would be on board with that.
There you go. See, my thing is you need to find a better cook of your turkey is how I feel about that.
Ooh, you just came after.
I hope it's not your mom that cooks the turkey.
It is. Well, you heard
of course
Christian just came after my mom's cooking.
No, I feel you on that. For years, our turkeys always ended up dry, so I can feel that struggle. I hear you there.
I don't
agree with it, but I hear you.
I'll defend my mom. I don't think it's the cooking. I just think I'm not a turkey guy.
Okay. Save yourself. Save me, please. Thank you.
Thankfully for you, I don't think she listens to this. Even my own mom doesn't listen to my podcast. That's how sad it is.
Well, when she's going to get a random burn, that's probably for the
best. I can let you go before I go on some of my other ones.
Well, so if we're going to talk about food, I don't understand sweet potato casserole. I don't get it. Or cranberry sauce. I don't get either one.
Potato casserole the same as the sweet potatoes with the marshmallows melted on top, or is that different?
My family does the marshmallows on top. They also do like candied pecans and like little crushed candied pecans and stuff too. But I don't get it.
First, you come after my mom's cooking, and then you come after my favorite Thanksgiving dish.
It's destiny, sir.
Yeah. It's actually, I think, my grandma makes the sweet potatoes with the marshmallows on top. Easily my favorite part. But,
okay. Yeah, I'm not a sweet potato guy.
What about, so you said cranberry sauce?
Yeah, also not a fan at all. And especially not to go on turkey.
All right. So then what's your favorite Thanksgiving food?
That's tough. Actually, it's a my family calls it an oyster dressing.
Mhm.
I know dressing has a weird connotation in the South compared to other places. It's basically like a type of stuffing. It's not, and I honestly don't even know if it actually has oysters in it or not. I doubt it, but maybe it does. I can't even, I don't even know what's in it. But it's only made for Thanksgiving and it's delicious. It's sweet and salty and uh, it's really really good. And my dog's trying to attack my baby right now.
Well, that doesn't sound particularly good. For
Oh wait,
those
no.
who don't know, Christian also has a dog named Pip the dog, or Pip the pup. Excuse me. Pip
Hello.
is very cute. And if you're watching our video, you can see Pip. So I do have another one. It is football related. So as many of you know, I've mentioned multiple times that I am a huge Giants fan. My other Thanksgiving related afterburn is why the fuck do the Cowboys always have to be on Thanksgiving? Why must you subject me to watching the Cowboys every single Thanksgiving when I know all this BS about their America's team, but that's part of the reason that everyone hates them. If you call yourself America's team, everyone will hate you. And it's even worse because one of my uncles is a huge Cowboys fan, even though he didn't grow up in Dallas, and he's always there for Thanksgiving. And I have to watch with him and watch him root for the Cowboys. And all I want to do is make a hole open up and take all of the Cowboys away, and they can never play football again.
Well, being a few hours away from Dallas, I can tell you that non-Cowboys fans in this area agree with you. It's annoying to listen to the Cowboys fans talk about the Cowboys and so on and so forth. However, when it comes to watching football, why does my family not want to watch football? I have one relative, one uncle that's what he wants to do. The rest of my family doesn't care, and it's not fair because I care, and I care about my fantasy teams on Thursdays when they want me to talk about other things.
Yeah, I can see that. I will say the one good thing about the Cowboys being on, besides the fact that the same would apply to any football game, is it means that you have to talk less. Because, like, don't get me wrong, I love my family, but at a certain point, you run out of things to make small talk about. And so football is great at filling that void. And I think that's why, or one of the reasons we all love having it on Thanksgiving Day.
There you go. That makes sense.
Yeah. Cool. Do you have anything to add before we wrap up here?
No, man, I really appreciate you having me on. I'm glad I was able to make this happen.
Yeah, no, it's awesome having you on. You've been a great guest. And where can we find you on Twitter?
At LSC Demon 10. That would be my Twitter handle.
Yep.
I know it's got demon in it. That's weird, but there's a reason.
And Christian has mentioned before, and I'm going to hold him to this now, especially because I'm publicly outing him, that even though he just had a baby and he's doing all this different stuff, he wants to get more involved in the fantasy community. So you have his handle now. Tweet questions at him. Ask him to write articles. He will do it because he has so much time on his hands.
Cool. I think this was a nice first step for me. Just jumping into the fantasy football community.
Yeah, podcasting is a staple of the fantasy community. And as always, guys, you can find me at Wrecked Fantasy. That's REKED. It's my initials. I'm not trying to sound hardcore. You can find this podcast at Afterburners Pod. And you can also find us on Podbean. And exciting news that I didn't even mention at the start of the podcast. We are now on iTunes. So you can find us on iTunes. If you don't have Podbean, leave us a review. If you review us, we will burn whatever you tell us to. If it's a good review. If it's a bad review, we'll probably burn you. And that's it for this week. Next week, hopefully, Sam and Mike will be back. We might have some new guests as we get more into the swing of having guests on. And appreciate everybody joining us today. Keep it classy, Fantasy Twitter. Until next time.